I hope everyone is having a great day and enjoying their week. Thank you for joining. Okay, give it just another moment before we kick this off. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us once again for our weekly Wednesday webinar series. Today's webinar is on 50 years of the JGP Research Fellowship. My name is Alsan Murtha, and I'm the Manager of Strategic Communications here at the National Hemophilia Foundation. At any point during the webinar, if you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We have NHF staff members monitoring these questions, which we will pose to our speaker after the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to the community beginning on Friday, August 12th. I am joined today by Dr. Kevin Mills, the Chief Science Officer here at NHF. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I will now turn it over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Alsan. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I am Kevin Mills. I am the Chief Scientific Officer for NHF. And I am going to talk a bit today about research and with maybe a bit of a focus on how NHF is supporting research through initiatives, including the Judith Graham Pool Fellowships. So the message I hope to leave you with today is that research is a community enterprise, and it really requires all of us. Starting with our mission, this slide captures our mission of NHF, and I won't read the slide, but we at NHF are engaging the community, really hoping to address the complications and the health of individuals living with inheritable bleeding disorders through research, education, and advocacy, with the ultimate goal of enabling people and their families to thrive. And I'm going to talk about one of those three pillars today, the pillar of research. The vision of NHF is really a world without inheritable blood disorders, to take us from the past where people had to live with the complications of blood disorders to a future where that's no longer something people have to live with. And I believe that future and that vision really begins with research. To illustrate that point, I wanted to first of all sort of reflect on where we were in the not so distant past with respect to hemophilia and other bleeding disorders, and where research has really brought us to. In the not so distant past, the standard of care for treatment for bleeding disorders was treatment with either whole blood or plasma products that had really limited efficacy. As a consequence, people with bleeding disorders, with hemophilia and other bleeding disorders, often found themselves hospitalized or confined to their homes, confined to their beds, oftentimes for long periods of time because of the complications associated with their uncontrolled bleeding. And as a consequence, just a few decades ago, the life expectancy for individuals with hemophilia or other bleeding disorders was really only into their teens. But research over the last several decades has really transformed the face of medicine for bleeding disorders and brought incredible improvements in care, including now lots of terrific products that are on the market, including extended half-life, factor replacement products, non-factor products like Hemlibra, and other products in the pipeline. Advances in imaging to enable better management of joint health and joint pain, the development of a comprehensive care model that's made available through our hemophilia treatment centers, and to the point where just in a few decades' time, that research, that science, and those incredible improvements have really allowed people with hemophilia and other bleeding disorders to live a completely full life expectancy, to have the outlook of a full life expectancy today. And so if over the last 3 or 4 decades, 5 decades, research has really brought us those incredible advances and those incredible improvements in care, just imagine where the research that we're doing today, the research that's funded today, can take us tomorrow. I think some of the advances that are on the horizon include advances in genomic medicines and the real possibility of cures through gene therapy and other technologies. I see terrific new advances in digital technologies and wearable technologies that can, I think, really transform what it means to live with a bleeding disorder. In the near future, I expect we will begin to see the development of testing and imaging technologies that used to happen exclusively in a clinical care setting, now actually being moving into the home and allowing people to test and manage their disorder in a much more personal and much more sort of easily accessible fashion. And so we're going to transform, I think, because of the research that's happening today, from a comprehensive care model to a model that's personalized care for everyone with a bleeding disorder that allows truly everyone to live their best life, for families and individuals affected to thrive. So I think there's incredible promise for what research will bring forward in the future. But to do that, I think we need to hatch an entirely new research paradigm today, one that shifts our mindset to one that includes all of the community as participating in the research paradigm. It's not just scientists and physicians, but I think research really needs to involve all of us. Research needs to be driven by the community and the needs of the community to address the problems that are important today, so that we can have the solutions that people really need tomorrow. That begins, I think, by redefining what it means to be a subject matter expert. At NHF, we've begun to refer to anyone who's living with an inheritable blood disorder. That includes patients, caregivers, families, others in the lives of people living with inheritable blood disorders. Really, we define those as subject matter experts. And the reason is quite simple, because nobody is really more of an expert than those who have the lived experience with their disorder. And so we believe it's important to turn the notion of a subject matter on its head. Scientists and physicians, which have typically been thought of as subject matter experts, really are technical experts, but the subject matter experts are the patients and their families. So I'm often asked when I say that, what do I know about research? And my answer to that is that really you know everything you need to know, because you have the lived experience. And that expertise, that knowledge, that lived experience is really critical to inform the researchers, the people in the labs, the people in the clinics, about what research should be conducted and what results are needed in order to really transform lives for subject matter experts. And so I would say that you, as a subject matter expert, know everything you need to know, and what you know really needs to be communicated to the researchers that are doing the work in the laboratories. So to bring about this paradigm shift in research and really bring us to that future I described, NHF has been working over the last couple of years to develop a national research blueprint. This is really an effort to work together with the whole community to bring together the awesome national research capabilities that exist in this country, to engage with the community to identify the most important, most critical priorities for the community, for those living with bleeding disorders, then working together collaboratively to solve those most important problems, and to do it in a way that ensures future sustainability of both that comprehensive care model that I talked about and sustainability in the research enterprise, so that we can continue to do the amazing research into the future. And the important element of this national research blueprint is that our goal is to integrate everyone into the research enterprise, not just scientists, not just clinicians, not just technicians, but really subject matter experts, family members, doctors, government agencies, all integrated into the national research blueprint and all working in the same direction to solve the critical problems today that will deliver the treatments and technologies and cures of tomorrow. Part of that integration into the national research blueprint is seeking ways to contribute to research. And one of those ways that I wanted to just highlight what we call community voices in research. It's or CVR. It's a registry that's run by the National Hemophilia Foundation that really is powering this notion of people-centric innovation. CVR, Community Voices in Research, is a completely unique, community-driven, SME-driven registry and database that captures the lived experience and the needs and the experiences of subject matter experts. And in so doing, then is a tool that we can use to integrate the patient voice into the conduct of research, so that the information that you provide as an SME to Community Voices in Research can then really inform how research is conducted, what research questions are asked. The goal of CVR is to promote research, quality research, but also to promote equitable quality healthcare, and to provide a personalized health portal for the participants into CVR. And to do that, we ask for your data contributions, we ask for you to share your lived experience, and we protect that data with the highest standards of data privacy and data security while making it available to the research community and ultimately back to participants in CVR. So I wanted to make a little plug for Community Voices in Research and ask everyone here to consider participating. Just a couple of words about the registry. You know, the intent is to really be a registry of the future. Patient registries used to be databases that collected and aggregated data, were focused on research and creating research findings. Communication was usually unidirectional. It was from the patient into the portal. Access to databases and registries used to be exclusive, usually to scientists and researchers. And the use of the database was oftentimes cumbersome and stationary. You were tethered to your desk. But there's been a real revolution in registries and databases. And now, rather than being data aggregators, registries like CVR are data generators and data liberators that are focused on the people that are contributing to the databases and are more about promoting positive health outcomes than just creating research findings. In that context, CVR endeavors to be omnidirectional, that there's communication not just from patients into the portal, but also communication back out to those that are participating. We aim to be inclusive, so that this is really a database that works for everybody, all stakeholders, that the experience is seamless, and that it's not stationary, but it's mobile. CVR as a tool for your health can go with you where you go. So just a couple final words about CVR, and then I'll talk about JGP fellows too. CVR in its first iteration was a community-driven, people-centered registry that captured the lived experience of individuals, and it was meant to promote research findings, be easy to use, and provide a rudimentary personal dashboard for participants in CVR. We're currently re-envisioning CVR, rebuilding the registry and the database. We call it CVR 2.0. We're now striving to create a better integrated platform with more personalized data, to make it multimodal and a mobile platform, and to provide an individualized health portal with 360-degree omnidirectional communication. And that's just a stepping stone to the future we envision for this database, which will really serve the community. So we believe the next generation CVR should be a seamless personal platform that provides comprehensive real-time data, not just to scientists, but to patients as well, that it's connected to wearable devices and digital technologies and electronic health records, so that it becomes a comprehensive platform that can actually be used by healthcare professionals and by patients for predictive, proactive, and real-time health management. So I just wanted to say a few words about CVR, because it's one way that you today can participate in research, provide your data and your lived experience, which will help to drive the research that happens in the future. And we want to collaborate with you in the community to really develop a registry and a database platform that will be a true individualized health portal for everyone. Now, I want to shift gears. I think it was important to talk a little bit about some of the research resources, because these are the resources that will be used by the researchers in the future. And so to shift gears, I first wanted to talk about the Judith Graham Pool Fellowships. NHF is celebrating the 50th year of our Judith Graham Poole, or JGP fellowships, which were named in honor of Dr. Judith Graham Poole, who was a titan of research in coagulation and bleeding disorders in the 1950s and the 1960s. For those 50 years, we've funded many fellows who have really changed the face of science and changed the face of medicine. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But the JGP fellowships, as one of the ways that NHF supports research, are so critical because they're about training tomorrow's doctors and training tomorrow's scientists, the innovators who are going to bring this amazing science into the service of people. And over that 50-year history, we've got a really impressive track record of supporting researchers who are discovering new medicines, new technologies, and new cures. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Judith Graham Poole Fellowships in a moment. But first, I thought it would be nice to hear from Dr. Jordan Shavit a little bit about Dr. Judith Graham Poole herself.
I think one of the most interesting things about JGP, which maybe a number of the up and coming researchers today don't realize, is that JGP stands for Judith Graham Poole. And Judith Graham Poole was a woman researcher at a time when there were not very many women researchers. And she made one of the biggest advances at the time to help the hemophilia community. She found that if you took plasma, the fluid part of blood without any cells, which was often frozen for use later, and this was given to patients to restore their clotting factors, but it wasn't concentrated enough. You could only give so much volume and only get so much factor in, and it only somewhat helped to treat bleeding. But what she found is, and actually I don't know the story, I'd be really interested to hear someday how it came about, but she figured out that if you took that plasma, that frozen plasma, and you let it thaw at room temperature, or actually on ice, what happened was that there was a precipitate that came out of it. There was a protein, a thick protein material that came out of solution. And when she tested that, it was enriched in factor VIII and von Willebrand factor. So that was the first concentrated factor product that we were able to give to patients. And that level of factor, you could give a high amount and really boost factor levels to a point where patients got a really good boost to their factor and could treat bleeds much more effectively than straight plasma could.
That was really terrific. Now I want to talk about how the JGP fellows have really contributed to the change in the practice of medicine over the last several decades. In the 1950s, Dr. Poole, as you heard from Dr. Shavit, really invented the process of cryoprecipitation. And in the 1960s, that led to a change in treatment with whole blood products to now concentrated cryo products that really improve the care for people living with hemophilia. So that was a real transformation that was based on her research into the basic mechanisms of blood clotting. In honor of those contributions, in 1972, we launched the Judith Graham Poole Fellowships, and immediately those fellowships began researching some of the most important questions facing people with bleeding disorders. Some of the early work was really around understanding the nature of inhibitors in hemophilia, and that led to a much better understanding of how the immune system interacts with the coagulation system, and gave us a better understanding of what inhibitors are, where they come from, and began to point the way to strategies to overcome inhibitors. During the 1970s and the 1980s, there was a lot of work being done by our JGP fellows also in molecular biology. This was the heyday, or really the starting of the molecular biology era. And many of our fellows were working on things like recombinant factor products and the genetics and the molecular biology of clotting. And so that led in the 1980s and the 1990s to the technologies to clone and produce in a test tube recombinant factor VIII and factor IX. Which really led to, again, a transformation in the way that hemophilia A and B were treated. Now moving from plasma-derived and blood-derived products to products that could be manufactured that could be produced quicker at higher scale and in a much safer way. And so that in the 1990s really changed the standard of care and the practice of medicine for hemophilia. And it was based on discoveries that were made by some of our JGP fellows. I'd like to stop right here for a minute and actually hear from one of those fellows, Dr. Gordon Vihar, in his own words about his experience with the Judith Graham Poole Fellowship.
I'm Gordon Vihar, the Vice President within Research at BioMarin Pharmaceutical. I'm honored to add my story to the significance that a Judith Graham Poole Fellowship can have on a young scientist. When I finished my PhD in biochemistry in 1976, I entered the blood coagulation field as a postdoctoral fellow studying factor VIII at the University of Washington. I applied for a JGP fellowship to support a truly basic research proposal, far removed from any clinical application, and I was fortunate enough to obtain the grant. This active support and vote of confidence in a new researcher in the field served to greatly motivate my efforts in the laboratory. I was also fortunate to be able to attend an annual NHF meeting to report on my work, and in the process get exposed to the hemophilia families and community, an experience that gave me insights of the impact my truly basic research efforts might one day hopefully have. A long story short, my project was successful and led to my leaving academia and joining a biotech startup called Genentech, to use my coagulation knowledge to guide the application of recombinant DNA technology to develop recombinant factor VIII, an effort that was successful. The JPG Fellowship, my first and only grant, was a great vote of confidence to a young researcher and served as the foundational basis and motivation for my continuing efforts in the biotechnology industry, hoping to play a role in expanding hemophilia therapeutic options. I remain to this day greatly appreciative of the JGP award at the beginning of my career.
Dr. Vihar's story is really, I think, a very inspiring one, and I think it perfectly illustrates how the Judith Graham Poole Fellowships have supported not only terrific science, but terrific scientists who have made some of the most important contributions to the field. Judith Graham Poole fellows don't just work on new therapeutics. They've worked on all kinds of new technologies, and some of the work that we've supported has led to the creation of new methods for doing imaging, doing medical imaging, which have now been applied beginning in the 2000s to really improve management of joint health and joint pain. So, not only are we funding the molecular biologists and the cell biologists, but we're also funding the technologists who are bringing technology changes into the world. And some of our JGP fellows have done some of the earliest and most important work in the development of gene therapies. We began supporting JGP fellows who were thinking about gene therapy as far back as the early 2000s. And that work has led now to a blossoming of the field with multiple gene therapy products for hemophilia A and hemophilia B coming soon. And those gene therapies, I think, begin to point the direction to eventually technologies that will cure hemophilia. And so, over the last 50 years, our JGP fellows have made some incredible discoveries. And those discoveries have really changed the way people live with inheritable bleeding disorders and changed the practice of medicine, truly helping people to thrive to the best of their ability. So if we've done that much in the last 50 years, imagine what the next 50 years will bring in terms of incredible discoveries, incredible technologies, and changes in the way people live their lives with hemophilia and other bleeding disorders. So I wanted to just pause here and listen to the story of one more of our Judith Graham Poole fellows, Dr. Saul Schulman, who I think credits Judith Graham Poole with really getting his career in hematology started.
Hello, my name is Saul Schulman, and I'm a hematologist scientist at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Harvard Medical School. I'm a prior recipient of the Judith Graham Poole Research Fellowship, and have to say that this was the first grant I ever received, and in that respect, the most important, because it really set me down a path as a committed physician scientist in the area of hemostasis. And I think the award really provided me with the external validation that I needed in order to realize that the research that we were doing was interesting and important, and also to convince my administration that the research that we were doing was interesting and important and fundable, and that ultimately this led to successful negotiations toward research position with protected time and startup funding. And so I'm incredibly grateful to the National Hemophilia Foundation and to all of the donors who work hard to raise funds for this important organization to help young investigators like myself get started, and hope that the program will continue to flourish as it has for so many years. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, I hope that leaves you with a little bit of a sense of the impact that the Judith Graham Pool Fellowships have had and the impact that NHF has had in supporting these terrific scientists as they make the discoveries that are really changing lives. I want to just close with saying that, I believe research really to be a community effort. And the paradigm shift that we're trying to bring about is to make research in hematology a community effort. And so I think of it like this. I think of it as, in the past, research has been a bit like a general contractor building a home, building a single family home. There was one person in charge of the design, executing the construction, and delivering that home for the use for a small number of people. The transformation that we want to bring about is more like a community barn raising. Research is really about the community coming together, working together with all of their individual skills, all of our individual perspectives and skills to build a structure, to build something for the future that will serve everyone in the community. So we really want research to move from a general contractor mode to the idea of a community barn raising. And so to do that, I just want to close with the notion that we need you. We need everybody in the community. We need you to advise the scientists and the researchers and NHF. We need you to participate by getting involved in research studies or participating in community voices for research. And we need you to give. I want to thank our generous donors and our chapters who have donated to the Judith Graham Pool Fellowships. I think I've illustrated the power and the impact that those fellowships have. But research is expensive and science takes money. And so we really depend on donations, whether they're small or large. Every dollar that's donated to Judith Graham Pool is contributing to the development of the next potential cure, the next therapy, the next technology. And so I really want to leave you with the message that, if you want to be involved, one of the best ways to do that is to give to your chapter or to NHF to support research like the Judith Graham Pool Fellowships. And so I want to thank everybody who has given and encourage you to continue to give so we can continue to do the terrific science that we've been able to support for the last 50 years, long into the future. So with that, I'll just close by saying I can't wait to work together. I can't wait to collaborate. I look forward to engaging with everyone who's on this call as a part of the community in bringing about that future research and really delivering the promise and the results to the people who need them. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bin Zhang. I am an associate professor in the Learning Research Institute of Cleveland Clinic. It is my honor to take part in the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Judith Graham Pool Postdoctoral Research Fellowship from the National Hemophilia Foundation as a past recipient. At the time when I received the fellowship award, I was working on the pathological mechanism of a bleeding disorder called the combined deficiency of factor V and factor VIII. By studying this rare genetic disease, we discovered a specialized protein secretion pathway that are used by both factor V and factor VIII. The JGP Fellowship Award gave me the opportunity to establish my own independent lab to continue this line of research. We're hoping that our research can help improve both recombinant factor VIII production and hemophilia A gene therapy. I am now the mentor of 2 JGP fellows, helping to train the next generation of researchers who are interested in bleeding disorders. JGP Fellowship Award was pivotal to my career development, and I believe that it will continue to make a huge difference for many more young scientists to come. I greatly appreciate the generous donations that have made this important award possible. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andrew Yee, and I'm a former recipient of the Judith Grant Poole Award. First of all, thank you for the support you have generously provided to make this prestigious program not only possible, but also highly impactful. The JGP Award steered my career towards research in bleeding disorders by opening a new area of investigation during my postdoctoral fellowship. Along with our collaborators, we made novel insights into the biology that govern the relationship between factor VIII and von Willebrand factor, and I am happy to see that these insights help to spur further the development of innovative therapeutics by others. Now that I lead a basic science research lab in the Hematology and Oncology Division of the Pediatrics Department at Baylor College of Medicine and Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Texas, we continue to develop new techniques and tools to study many other characteristics of von Willebrand factor that are important in von Willebrand disease. And one of the benefits of having been awarded the JGP is that I get to work with other former JGP awardees who are just as enthusiastic as we are about solving some of the more complex biological questions that we encounter with bleeding disorders. So, with deep gratitude and a sense of pride, we look forward to training the next generation of JGP awardees to grow as researchers and to make their own impactful insights and discoveries that are important to the bleeding disorders community.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing all of that with us today. Before we kick off our Q&A, I want to just make sure that everyone knows you can enter your questions in the Q&A for us at the bottom of your screen. And we've got a few. Let's see. So the first one is, how can I ensure that my donation goes directly to JGP?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm happy to answer that. You as the donor are entitled to steer your donation into whatever programs within NHF or any other foundation for that matter that you want to steer those into. So you can designate your gift to support the Judith Grant Poole fellowships, or you can designate that gift to support other facets of the research that NHF supports. Really, the power is yours, and we really welcome the support at any level for JGP. So please do give, please do designate those gifts for JGP. But we're certainly happy to take donations for the other terrific ways in which we support research as well.
Great. Do you know how much funding has gone into JGP since 1972?
I do. So we have given over $9 million in grants to 106 award recipients since 1972. And those funds have gone directly into supporting some of the science that I talked about and many, many other discoveries, which I didn't have time to talk about.
Fantastic. So how does NHF share the outcomes of the researchers such as JGP with the community? Where can we find this info?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. I mean, certainly we want our researchers to publish their findings, make their findings available to the community. The scientific researchers really have a mandate to publish their findings in peer-reviewed journals that get out to the scientific community, but we really want to make those researchers also available to the broader community. So we like to get researchers who have been funded by generous donations to meet with people at chapter events or at NHF events, or we like to be able to highlight those investigators and their findings at our annual Bleeding Disorders Conference. I think this is a really important question because it goes right to the heart of community-powered, community-driven research that with omnidirectional communication. And so I think there's many ways that we try to make the research findings, not just available, but really relatable to the community. But I think it's clear that we can do better as well. And so as we go forward and we develop the National Research Blueprint, one of the things we really want to do is ensure that there is thorough and deep engagement between our researchers, the community that funds that research, and really makes it clear that the research is in service of the community. So I think we've done many things in many venues to try to make that research communicated out. But as I look to the future, I know that we can do even better.
Great. So does NHF support researchers other than physicians with the JGP Research Fellowship, or do you have to be specific in who you are when you're applying?
No, we sure do. We support basic science as well as clinical and translational research. And it's our philosophy that research all along that continuum, from the very basic laboratory discoveries all the way to clinical trials, has a role to play in bringing new medicines, new technologies, new cures into the world. And so we very much want to be able to support investigators all along that continuum. And we also, in addition to the JGP fellowships, have other mechanisms where we can support researchers throughout the various stages of their career arc as well.
Great. You mentioned CVR earlier in your presentation. How is CVR different than the Athens registry?
Oh, this is a terrific question. So the Athens data sets and the Athens registry and CVR are two complementary systems. Athens is provider reported data, it's clinical data. It's data that's coming into their registry through the HTCs, through comprehensive care visits. And CVR is fully patient reported, fully self-reported data that captures something that the Athens data doesn't capture, which is the lived experience, what it's like to live with your bleeding disorder, what it's like to go through daily life, and what are the important things to you as the subject matter expert. CVR doesn't capture those medical records and that provider reported data. And so the two data sets really are very complementary, and it's together that they provide a much more 360-degree view of the experience of living with a bleeding disorder.
Great. So how does funded research through NHF, like through the JGP fellowship, fit into the research blueprint?
It's research that's funded through the JGP fellows and other mechanisms is really critical and central to the research blueprint. The research blueprint is an effort to bring together the whole community to tackle the most important problems that have been defined by the community. The JGP fellows and the other scientists that we fund and that other agencies fund are the scientists that are going to execute on those goals. They are the scientists that will bring about the results that the community has defined as most important. And so the JGP fellows are really inextricable from the National Research Blueprint. They are the fuel in the engine of future research. And so I can't overstate how important it is for us to not only continue to fund those researchers, but really to grow the program as well.
Great. Back to CVR, you mentioned that it was next gen. Is there going to be a big transition within CVR?
That's a terrific question. Yes, we're undergoing a transition right now from the first generation version of CVR, which set about to capture the patient experience and to provide those data to researchers and provide a patient dashboard, to a new system, which will have that same functionality, but will provide a lot more utility, not only to researchers, but also to patients and participants and to healthcare providers. We'll be transitioning to a new system that will allow us to scale the program so that we can grow the amount of participation within the program and provide a lot more services and a lot more functionality. We hope that transition will be seamless, that the participants in CVR won't really notice the change. It'll all happen sort of in the background, but we are transitioning to a new system that will be much more high-powered than our current system and will provide a lot more services and a lot more functionality that I think you'll see rolled out in the near future.
Fantastic. So if someone's considering applying for the JGP Research Fellowship, what would you say to them before they turn in their application? Any insight, tips?
I would say absolutely submit that application. We are looking to fund the very best science, the very best research, and the very best researchers. So my advice to an investigator that's thinking about submitting a fellowship for JGP is tackle the important problems, think about what's really important and is going to make important transformational changes, and work on those problems, whether they're basic science problems or clinical studies. Work on the things that are most important and most impactful, that are informed by the community. Listen to the community, listen to the feedback from SMEs, from subject matter experts, and work on those problems, because that's what's going to change lives. My other bit of advice to fellows would be find terrific mentors. So many of our former Judith Graham Poole fellows have gone on to become mentors of JGP fellows themselves. Find those experts, find those mentors, find those people who can not only be, great mentors, but great collaborators. That's really how we're going to create a community of science that's going to bring the blueprint to life and move the science forward.
Fantastic. Let's see, just have a couple more for you. Is industry funding the work in the blueprint?
There will be a role for industry to play in the research blueprint. The ultimate funding for the work that gets done will actually be funded by public and private partnerships. So there will be a role for industry, but there will also be a role for our government agencies, for organizations like the National Hemophilia Foundation, for local entities like our chapters as well as other charitable foundations. This is really the point of the blueprint, is that we have a lot of these resources out there, but we need a mechanism to marshal those resources, to bring them together, to point them in the same direction. And so I think it's really only through public-private partnerships where we're all working toward the same goals and rowing in the same direction that we're going to make meaningful change. So yes, we really want to engage industry as partners in advancing the science, but we want to engage them as partners together with the other stakeholders, with scientists, with government agencies, and most importantly, with community members, with subject matter experts, so that all of that funded research is really helping to tackle the problems that the community defines as most important.
Fantastic. Okay, I don't have any other questions for you. Do you have anything you'd like to share with the audience before we sign off?
Yeah, I think two related thoughts. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone who is on this call, has listened to what we've had to say today, for an interest in science, an interest in research, an interest in supporting the work that we do. And I want to encourage everyone here to think about ways to become involved. We certainly need the donations to continue to support these incredible JGP fellows into the future, and to continue to support the careers of amazing people like Dr. Schulman and Dr. Vihar and Dr. Yi. Because the work that they're doing today is going to lead to discoveries tomorrow that we can't even possibly imagine. And it's the donations that happen, the donations that come in, big or small, that support those researchers in their career. So really encourage you to find ways to get involved, and donating is one way. But there are other ways to become involved as well. And we really want to hear your voice. Working through CVR, contributing your data through CVR is a way to do that. Engaging with NHF, engaging with your chapters, engaging with your HTCs, becoming knowledgeable about research, becoming really a volunteer ambassador for the value of research is so important to this community effort, to this barn raising that I talked about. So I think my final message would be, this is a community effort. Research is a community activity. And so I ask everyone who's here to find a way to get involved, so that we can really realize the promise of the incredible research that's happening, and really change lives in a meaningful way.
Great, thank you so much. Well, I'd like to thank you once more, Dr. Mills, for taking the time to join us this afternoon. We appreciate your time and expertise. I'd like to also thank each one of our viewers for joining us. Please note that this recorded webinar will be available on Friday, August 12th at hemophilia.org under the events tab with all of our archived webinars. Also available in the events tab is our upcoming schedule for our weekly Wednesday webinar series. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and have a wonderful week.